All right. Good afternoon, everyone. James Donaldson from Standing Above the Crowd podcast here in Seattle, Washington at Rainier Avenue Radio in beautiful downtown Seattle. Coming to you live every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I hope you can join us every time live. But if not, pull it on down from YouTube or other platforms out there, and you can get the whole show that way as well. Hey, I want to do another special tribute show today. We do have an announcement first. I want to make sure I get out of the way, and then we'll dive into our show in just a second. Let me see here what the announcements are today. Shop local this Christmas at the Columbia City Theater next Saturday, December 13th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. All right. It's important to support your local businesses. So shop local and come on out to Columbia City Theater, and they'll have a nice little Christmas thing going on December 13th. All right. Hope to see you there. Anyway, I wanted to follow up here a little bit and first of all, give you a little bit more information about me and what I do. This is the Standing Above the Crowd podcast every single Thursday, but also I am the executive director for Your Gift of Life Foundation, which really focuses on mental health awareness and suicide prevention. You can find out a lot more information at yourgiftoflife.org, which is my website. And it's got tons of information, tons of my stories, and everything else I'm doing in that field and arena. Today is a special show for me. The last couple of shows we had part one and part two of a tribute to Lenny Wilkens, a wonderful, wonderful man who passed away, unfortunately, last month in November. And it's a challenge sometimes rounding up 2 or 3 or 4 guests to be on the show at the same time. And today, because we have the Celebration of Life ceremony for Lenny tomorrow here in Seattle area, I'll be going to that, and several of the other guys will too. I decided to go ahead and wing it by myself today, okay, and just give another tribute to Lenny Wilkens episode. And next week, we hope to get some of the guys from the actual championship team from 1979 on to talk about that great experience and that great run those Sonics had back in 78, 79. They won the championship, in 79, and the rest was history. But, my beginnings with Lenny Wilkens go way back to soon after I graduated from Washington State University. Little did I know that my other beloved coach, George Raveling from Washington State, who ironically passed away as well this year in 2025, he and Lenny were near childhood friends. They've known each other since college days, especially when they were playing in local tournaments back on the East Coast. George was from Philly, Lenny was from Brooklyn, and those two guys met up and they became lifelong friends for the rest of the way. I didn't know that when I was playing for George at the time. Matter of fact, I knew very little about Lenny Wilkens at that time, even though they were in the midst of their championship run in 1978, 1979. But anyway, after I graduated from Washington State, none of us were sure if I was going to be good enough to make it in the NBA. I think George Raveling had some conversations with Lenny and let him know that, hey, James is very coachable. He works hard. He's wanting to learn. He's wanting to get better, and he won't disappoint you. Okay, and that was enough to have Lenny allow me to come in for a tryout. Not the year they won. They won in 79. I graduated in 79 from Washington State. And of course, like the old biblical story, there was no room at the end, right? I mean, all those great players were under guaranteed contracts. They didn't need to make up any changes. They didn't have any room for any newcomer like me. They had 2 first-round picks that year, James Bailey and Vinnie Johnson. So those 2 guys automatically made the team. But me in the 4th round, there was no way I was going to make it. So I went overseas to Italy and played for my very first professional year. And it was good for me. Good for me to get out there and play and really start to hone my game, play 35, 40 minutes a night, get double points and double points and rebounds, and just really start to round into a professional basketball player. The next year, I came back and tried out for the Sonics in 1980. And that's when I first time person to person met Lenny Wilkens. Lenny was a great coach, man. I don't think there was a better coach I could have broken the league with. He really was fantastic with old veteran players, but also with young players who were willing to listen, willing to learn, willing to be coached, not only by him, but by some of the old veterans on the team as well. I mean, I had Jack Sikma alongside me, Lonnie Shelton, John Johnson, JJ, Gus Williams, Fred Brown. I mean, all these guys were old, established veterans, 5, 6, 7, 8 years older than I am. And they took me under their wing and they really showed me the life of the NBA and how to really, submit myself as a real bona fide player. Lenny was just great in bringing me along slowly, kind of seeing where I fit, what my skill sets were, and how that was all going to work out. I ended up playing in 3 years for the Sonics and for Lenny Wilkens, 1980 to 1983. And then, as the business teaches you real quickly, I got traded away to the San Diego Clippers in 1983-84 season. But those 3 years really cemented Seattle as home for me. I didn't know much about Seattle except for coming over when I was at Washington State playing against the University of Washington, home and away series. And that's about all I knew about Seattle. And plus, I had tons and tons of friends who grew up here in the Seattle area and went to WSU with me. And so we all kind of grew up together as young people and started out on our respective careers here in Seattle and still have tons of those dear friends to this day around the Seattle area. So that was my first experience with Lenny. After I got traded, I went on and played with the Clippers for 3 years, with the Dallas Mavericks for 7 years, with the New York Knicks for half of a year, with the Utah Jazz for 2 years. And then he moved on too. Then he moved on to coach with the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Atlanta Hawks, the Toronto Raptors, the New York Knicks. So he had stops along the way too. So I would see him on the NBA circuit. We'd be playing against his teams and things. And we didn't really have much more than a hi, bye, how you doing, coach kind of relationship at that time. It wasn't until we both retired. He retired from coaching. I retired from basketball. We both settled here in the Northwest. And we actually started getting a chance to know each other a little bit better. I was going to his annual Lenny Wilkens Foundation Gala that he had every summer. 3-day event, golf tournament, auction, charitable auction, raising tons of money for local charities that Lenny supported. And I was going to that every year and just really being supportive and being in the presence of Lenny and all the other great players and people. And then along that way, probably a good 15 years ago or so, I just asked Lenny if I can join him for breakfast one day and talk and get to know him a little bit better. And he was so open to that. He's like, wow, yeah, I would love to do that. So we started meeting, 2 or 3, 4 times a year, every 2 or 3 months for breakfast at a restaurant over in Bellevue outside of Seattle. And it was just so wonderful to be sitting in the presence of this great source of wisdom and knowledge and experience. And I mean, people don't remember, they don't realize that Lenny made the NBA Hall of Fame 3 times. I mean, that's unprecedented. Once as a player, once as a coach, and another time as an Olympic coach. 3 times in the NBA Hall of Fame. And so we would just talk, we'd talk about business. Lenny had a little entrepreneurial spirit to himself, and I was very entrepreneurial as well. He got me involved with some of the things he was doing. I remember he was trying to get on board with this old school tennis shoe, kind of a throwback to the old Chuck Taylor Converse kind of shoes. And we were, making up prototypes of that. I was working with some of Lenny's folks, and they were meeting with me as well. And that was a fun project to do and be part of. But Lenny also got involved with something I was doing, which is called the Athlete's Playbook. And this was a online platform to help out young athletes who were coming out of high school and going on to college, and really helping them uh, to 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 maximize the benefits and the potential that they get from education first and foremost, but also their scholastic opportunities, the opportunity to play on the teams that they were going to, prepare them so much better than schools typically prepare kids. And so we'd get their GPA up, we'd get them a mentor to work with them. They'd get on to college, they'd continue the good work they're doing, knowing that, a small percentage of them are going to make it to the pros in the first place. And so our concern was really making sure these kids had a bona fide education underneath them. And when they graduated from high school, they graduated from college, that they knew what they wanted to do with their life. If they made it to the pros, hey, great. That's icing on the cake and more power to you. But most of them aren't going to make it to the pros, and they need to have something to fall back on. So Lenny was very, very helpful with that. He made videos for us. He'd make messages to the young people about dream big and go for the stars. And he just inspiring these kids to do these kind of wonderful things. And so I really, really appreciated that. We worked on that for 2 or 3 or 4 years or so. It never did quite get off the ground the way we wanted it to. Well, one thing, COVID hit, so that kind of put a stop to a lot of things. And then the other thing was that, the landscape of college athletes, collegiate sports changed dramatically with the introduction of the NIL, the name, image, and likeness, and the transfer portal. And so it took away a lot of the emphasis of what the athlete's playbook was about. Really getting these kids to commit to a school and stay there and graduate and get that college experience and be proud of their degree, be proud of their school. That kind of all went out the window now with transfer portal. Matter of fact, I think I heard recently there's 40,000 kids in the transfer portal right now of all sports at the university levels. And they are just going to transfer left and right to whatever school they want to next year. And it's really hard to sustain, that consistency that you need, that stability that you need. Yeah, they'll go on and play, and they'll get a chance to play collegiate sports. Some of them will go on to the pros. Some of them will make money with NIL. Some of them will transfer 2 or 3 times. I hope that they, slow it down enough to get their degrees, but I don't think that's going to be one of the motivating factors and features of this new NIL age that we're in. So anyway, I tell you all that to let you know that Lenny was really up to speed on everything that was going on. We talked often about, retired NBA players. I'm wearing a little shirt here today, Legends of Basketball. This is our NBA Retired Players Association. 800 players or so in the association. I was on the board for about 8 years, and Lenny was so helpful and so proud of me. He worked with the founding fathers of the association, guys like Oscar Robinson and Archie Clark and Dave Bing and Dave Cowens. Lenny was right there working with those guys to put this together for us, to give us an opportunity of, what life is like after the ball stops bouncing, when real life settles in and you got bills to pay, you got a mortgage to take care of, you got a family to take care of, how to make that transition. And so I did a lot of work in that area. Lenny was right there, always giving me good advice and helping me with that too, as well. Another thing we talked about though, as we kept on, the years kept going by, we're starting to lose more and more of our colleagues. Lenny lost several that I knew of, that he knew personally. Guys like Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, Paul Silas, and Lenny would share great stories about each one of these individuals, how they were as individuals, how they were as people. Their basketball statistics spoke for themselves. I mean, they were truly great players. But people forget that, beyond that work they do on the hardwood, there's a lot of good work they do off the court too. And Lenny was up to speed on so many of these guys. And then this year alone, we lost mutual friends with the passing of Gus Williams, the star point guard on the championship team. And Lenny was right there through that with me. I was really close to Gus and his family, and I would help Lenny or feed him the information back from the family to let him know how Gus was doing. Slick Watts was another one that we lost this year. These are iconic sonic figures that people just love to this day. And Lenny and I attended Slick Watts' memorial service together here in Seattle. I flew back to New York for Gus's memorial service there, but Lenny was up to speed on what was going on. Other colleagues, such as Junior Bridgman, my old teammate with the LA San Diego Clippers, and just a great businessman, and Lenny knew him very well as well. George Raveling, I spoke of already. Lenny and George were friends from back in high school and college basketball tournaments back in the day, and stayed in touch throughout and became lifelong friends. Lenny would tell me stories about how George was wanting to date Lenny's sister back in college. And he took her out once or twice, but, he just had a little chuckle about Lenny had a little chuckle about everything. He didn't take life, I don't want to say that serious. Well, he had a way of approaching life. He didn't let things get him down. He just had a way of being able to handle all that life threw at him and handle it in a dignified kind of a way where, inside he'd be ruffled and it'd bother him. But on the outside, he wasn't going to let you see that. He'd tell me stories of, being with the St. Louis Hawks back in the 60s and having to travel down south, playing exhibition games in Texas and Louisiana and Georgia and these places out in the boonies, and where blacks were not welcomed, especially in the restaurants. They weren't welcome to be served in the restaurant. They still had whites only water faucets, whites only bathrooms. The black players had to stay out in the bus or stay behind the building. And it was just so sad to hear these kind of stories. But, Lenny was great at sharing these stories with me and letting me see how far we've come as a people, but yet how far we still need to go. We got a lot of work to do still. But he never let it beat him down. He never let it make him bitter, okay, about how he approached life. And what people may or may not have done to him to offend him. He just kind of waited, let it slide off. He put it in that little compartmental piece in his mind and just move on and keep on going. I learned a lot about life and how to deal with all those things through Lenny because of that. I talked to Lenny Wilkens just 2 days before he passed. Let me back that up. He had his birthday in October, late October. I talked to him just a day before his birthday. I said, Lenny, hey, I want to call you the day before because I know if I call you on the day of, I'm not getting through. Okay, your phone's going to be blowing up. So I called him the day before, and, it's 88 years old. I said, hey, man, happy 88th. He's like, hey, how about that? And he kind of chuckled and he laughed. Wow. And, we kept it short. I didn't want to take up all his time, but I just wanted to wish him a happy birthday, let him know that I loved him. And then I called him 2 days before he passed away. I was in the midst of setting up another breakfast for us. And, he told me, he's like, well, we may have to kick it down the road a little bit. My health has been a little iffy all summer. Doctor appointments left and right, nonstop. And I knew that. So I just had to say, well, Coach, I care about you. I love you. I'm going to check in on you every single week from here on out. Okay. And he said, yeah, you do that. Just keep on checking on me. And his voice sounded strong. He sounded strong. He didn't seem worried or tense or anything. And then 48 hours just about later, he passed away. And little did I know that'd be the last time I spoke to him. We never think that. We always think these folks are going to be along with us forever, and that they're never going to leave. But there comes that time for everybody that we have to be ready. Matter of fact, the next conversation I was going to have with Lenny was about death and dying. And how is he dealing with that? How he's seeing all of our colleagues and our friends pass away one by one by one. How is he dealing with that? And then, he's 88 years old. He's got a lot more years behind him than he does in front of him. How is he approaching that? How is he working? I didn't get a chance to have that conversation, but that's what we were going to talk about the next time. I admired him. I admired him because he became a great friend and a mentor to me. 20 years my senior. And I told Lenny, I said, Lenny, I want to be like you when I grow up, If I can find me somebody 20 years my junior and mentor them the way you mentored me, man, that would be awesome. So I'm keeping an eye open for some young guy to come along and just be able to mentor him into my older age and his older age, and be a positive influence in his life as well. I got a couple people in mind, but these things, you can't force them. You just let them be and let them grow on their own, and they will. But we're all going to miss Lenny Wilkens. He had his statue dedication back in June of this year at the Climate Pledge Arena here in Seattle. Nice, beautiful statue they put up on him. He also has a street outside the Climate Pledge Arena at Lenny Wilkens Way. And so my health was a little iffy this summer as well. I called Lenny the day of and said, hey, I can't make your statue dedication. I'm getting lightheaded and I'm falling out. I can't be on my feet too long. He said, hey, James, I understand. You stay right where you are and take care of yourself. We'll get a chance to see each other soon. And we did. Okay. But I just always wanted him to know, that I was thinking about him, that I cared about him, that I loved him. And he knew that. He knew that. I could tell things were starting to go decline a little bit the last couple of times we got together. He was getting awful thin, awfully frail. His appetite was going a little bit. He used to he'd have these big breakfasts of, omelets and biscuits and hash browns, and he'd eat as much as I did back in the day. But the last 2 or 3 times, he didn't have much of an appetite. He's just kind of, picking at his food and get his little coffee and maybe an English muffin or a biscuit. Just didn't have the appetite. Seemed to be not quite as sharp as he always was, seemed to be a little distracted. Maybe he had this illness on his mind, whatever it was that took him. But I don't know. But it was just such a pleasure to be with him through those times. And we talked about everything. Basketball was a big part of it, but also life was even a bigger part. He still watched the NBA games, nonstop. He'd be at home watching the games, and he'd give me reports on them because I don't watch it that much as I used to. And he'd tell me, he'd break it down for me how today's game is so much different than the day he coached, and whether he can coach in today's game with the young players getting compensated so well and so much right off the bat, and not really having to prove themselves like we did. I question whether I could play in today's game at all, being a big man that I am. I don't have a 3-point shot. I don't have a handle. So I don't know if I could play in today's game. But, it's just great to compare those kind of notes. And so, we're all going to miss Lenny Wilkens. This was a one-of-a-kind, true treasure and a gem of a person that they don't come along that often. And when they do, we just have to embrace them and cherish them and just really appreciate every single aspect of them while they're here. And so, I'll be at the ceremony tomorrow, and I'll see some of the guys, some of the colleagues, some of the teammates, some of the players, and we'll get a chance to say hi to each other. And my encouragement to all of them and all of us is, hey, let's stay in touch and appreciate each other, because we just don't know you know, how things may turn out. And, you know, and tomorrow's not promised. So, you know, I like to make sure that I let folks know that I love them while they're here to hear those words. And they're here to see me form those words with my lips and with my eyes and my facial expression. You know, they talk about giving people flowers while they're still able to receive them. And that's right. That's so true. So we all need to do a better job of that. So Lenny Wilkens, I'm going to miss you, man. You know, this first couple of weeks after you passed, I was still, you know, just out of habit, reaching for the phone to pick up the phone and give you a call, see how you're doing, check in on you. It took a while for that urge to finally go away and realize that you're not going to be able to answer on the other end. But I miss you so much, and you taught me so much. Lessons I'll never forget. And if God blesses me with 88 years like he did with you, man, I just hope these next 20 years can be just like you lived your life, because that's the way it should be done. You did a great job, my man. And, you know, I pray for you, pray for the family, and all the guys that knew you. I'll see everybody tomorrow. I'll make sure everybody, you know, I make sure I let everybody know that, you know, we did a little tribute show to you today. Me talking about my special friend and special relationship I had with you. So with that, I want to just kind of end this a couple minutes early, but I say thank you. And Lenny Wilkens, rest in peace, my friend. You are loved and beloved and will be tremendously missed. This is James Donaldson signing off today. You all be good to each other. Tell each other you love each other. Don't let the time slip by without appreciating it. All right? Take care. James Donaldson signing off. Standing by the crowd. We'll see you again next week at this same time, same station. Have a great one, everybody. Love you.